Welcome to episode 433 of the Microsoft Cloud IT Pro Podcast, recorded live on July 27, 2026. This is a show about Microsoft 365 and Azure from the perspective of IT pros and end users, where we discuss a topic or recent news and how it relates to you. Today, we discuss how Microsoft 365 authentication is moving from make passwords safer with MFA to remove phishable authentication wherever possible. The practical conversation for IT pros is no longer just whether MFA is enabled, it is which methods are allowed, which users are still on SMS or voice, how passkeys change the user experience, and how to balance security, accessibility, recovery, and the support load.
Blast off to our topic of the day.
To authentication. That's quite a topic.
Authentication, yeah. So you and I have been maybe ranting a little bit in the background to each other and figured this would make for a good conversation. So there's this whole world in, I think, Microsoft land, and we'll probably focus on M365, but largely applies to the same things of logging into Azure or really any property that's bound to Entra ID as an identity provider. So there's been this march from Microsoft over the years to move away from making passwords safer with things like multi-factor authentication to just getting to a general stance of phishable authentication is not possible wherever it was possible in the past. So that's been a weird one, right? Like we're in this world of transitioning from MFA and MFA enablement and all the things we've done over the years to get there to a new set of methods which are allowed. And even out of that set of methods, sometimes things are changing between like SMS, OTP. You've got the whole world of like passkeys are supposed to be better, but I think you and I might rant a little bit like, are they really? And see where we come out. So I think it'll be a fun conversation because we get to kind of talk about the changes in the authentication landscape, what's happened along the way, what's changed, what's in, what's out, and how folks can think about maybe not baselining, but maybe rebaselining, how you think about security, accessibility in a world of we're trying to eliminate phishable authentication wherever possible. What does things like account recovery look like? What's your support burden with your end users? And where does that fall out? So there's a whole bunch to kind of peel apart as we go through this one. So you want to start with maybe like Passkeys and M365, because that's kind of becoming the default authentication experience here pretty soon.
Yeah.
September this year.
Right. And I was going to say, even some history on that before we start talking about passkeys, and they are going to be the default, is some of this came out too, is that Microsoft's been talking about this, but for a little bit, but the roadmap came out about this, and there may be some new dates, is that as a part of passkeys becoming the new default, Microsoft also announced that SMS and voice for MFA are going to be fully retired. So if you are using Entra for this stuff and you're still relying on SMS and voice, there is now an official timeline from Microsoft on this that as of as early as September of this year, 2026, September 18, Microsoft is going to give you options for telecom providers if you want to keep using SMS and voice. They're no longer going to offer it, but they will give you the option to go sign up with a third-party telecom and use it. By October of 2026, October 30, organizations still using voice have to go to third-party telecom. And then by February 1 of 2027, SMS and voice is going to be fully retired. They're going to be blocked from signing in. And this is interesting. I think you'll still be able to use third parties after 2027, but the Microsoft one is going to be just gone. If you were using Microsoft at all by February, you're going to have to go to Passkeys, which is why in preparation for this, September 1, Passkeys are going to become that default.
Which I think is going to lead to a little bit of like passkey fatigue for folks. It's going to be going to be an interesting place, I think, for customers to land.
This is one of these, like, I have two very different perspectives on Passkeys. I have my IT pro security, Passkeys are awesome standpoint, because SMS, voice, phishing, I mean, the more we can get to passkeys and no passwords. From a security perspective, I'm all for that. From an end user perspective, I've had some challenges with passkeys. And I'm like, we're in this IT landscape. We're used to dealing with technology, and passkeys I can get around. I think to some users and some people I deal with, and I'm like, this could be interesting, to say the least.
I think it is a little bit of a hurdle. Everything out there is ever so slightly different. And I think in the world of M365 and passkeys, it's kind of muddied even further because you're locked into the Microsoft ecosystem for better or worse. Like we were talking about this maybe last week or the week before. I would really like to be able to like manage my passkey for something like my Entra ID in 1Password, where every other passkey that I have is. Guess what I can't manage in 1Password? I have to use the Microsoft Authenticator app, which has been losing features over the years. You would think it's getting more streamlined and better. Like, it's not better. Right? It kind of sits out there and continues to persist. But things like doing like a passkey through the Authenticator app are infuriating versus just doing them in your browser or through a password manager, be it 1Password or Bitwarden or anything like that. So I think that's part of it, is like Microsoft locks you into an ecosystem that maybe isn't as friendly or isn't doing the things that you're doing in other parts of it, which makes it a little harder to kind of onboard to and smooth out. And it also has its own fits and bumps along the way. So like if I go and authenticate to M365 and my organization requires me to use a passkey, well, that's great. So I've got that passkey on my phone. I've got the Authenticator app installed. So let's go ahead and pull that up. All right, let me scan the QR code. Yep, I scanned the QR code, authenticated with my face or Touch ID or fingerprint, whatever it happened to be. And then you kind of got to wait for the magic to happen. So I find this part to be kind of infuriating across every operating system, be it like a Mac or a Windows device, is I sit here and I authenticate on my phone, and then I got to wait for it to connect over Bluetooth and find my device, and hopefully it connects. Sometimes it connects in like 2 seconds, and it's like, oh, wow, that went through and it was magical. Sometimes it just sits and spins forever, and it's the most infuriating thing because you don't know what happened, and it'll do these crazy things, like it'll time out, and then that QR code is now invalid. You got to go back, generate another one, start your authentication flow. Like it's very like black box in the implementation and the way Microsoft did it, I think, versus the way you can hit it in other parts of the ecosystem. Say if you were to just be able to like store your passkey in a password manager or your local browser or things like that. Microsoft has made some deliberate choices there, and some of them have, I think, just additional friction that make them just ever so slightly harder to use and onboard with, and then to train your users on. Like you said, like, I think you and I are pretty, I think it's fair to say, like we're savvy when it comes to this stuff, and it infuriates me at times. Like that doesn't make it very high on things like the WAF, the wife acceptance factor for something like this would be pretty low, right? If I told my wife, like, hey, every time you need to log into your email account, you have to jump through this hoop, she would, I think, just stop using email.
It is. And there was an interesting article that came out too on How To Geek that we'll link to in the show notes, where it talks about some of this too, where passkeys are supposed to replace passwords. Microsoft is obviously trying to move in this direction with passkeys. They did it, 3 or 4 or 5 years ago already with personal Microsoft accounts where you could delete your password. But they're still confusing. And you were mentioning your wife. I know my wife would fall in this boat as well. Is in this article kind of hints at us is that passkeys are just kind of happening, but there's not a lot of, I think it's confusing. It's hard for users to understand. And like what is a passkey? You mentioned this earlier. It's like, I can do passkeys on Authenticator. I can do passkeys in 1Password. I can do passkeys on USB keys, on FIDO2 keys. Technically, passkeys can be stored on Windows using Windows Hello for Business. Like, in the past, the password is a password. Everybody kind of understood usernames and passwords. And passkeys are like, well, where are they stored? Different websites can store them different places. Different things are supported. And trying to get from a user perspective, how do you get users to understand this? How do you get users to adopt this? And what does that user experience look like? I feel like it's a challenge, especially like you said, for those non-IT users that aren't really used to it. They don't really know what it is. And some of them are like, well, where do I store this? And I mean, to my perspective, 1Password's great because if I switch devices, my passkey goes with me. But what if when I replace my phone and all my passkeys are there, or my passkeys are on my computer and I go to a new computer, but all my passkeys were locked up in Windows Hello for Business on my old computer? There's a lot more complexity to passkeys, and I think a lot more user education that has to happen when you start looking at how do you push these out and deploy these to end users.
For sure. I think just even like the onboarding flow alone is enough to kind of think about and get through. And then how do you want to configure your environment, I think is another part of it. I think some organizations would say like, hey, passkeys are like the end all be all, let's go do them. And sometimes that's at the expense of making other forms of authentication, maybe even like a little bit more friction or harder to use. So you might say like, hey, I'm going to keep a token for a passkey alive for 24 hours, but sorry, if you authenticate by hardware key, by like a YubiKey key or something like that, I'm going to make you re-authenticate every 2 hours because you have the little key in there, right? It should be easy. It won't interrupt your flow at all, except it really does interrupt your flow. So maybe before we dive too deep into our rant about passkeys, we should talk about kind of like what's out there today and what's going away and what folks should maybe think about as you've got this general march towards passkeys for everybody.
Yeah.
It's coming, right? Whether you want it or not, it's coming. So you do have to kind of prepare for it and get ready.
I've had clients already asking me, I'm working with some already on, okay, we know we need to roll out passkeys. We want to get to passwordless. To your point, how do we do this? What does this look like in terms of an actual deployment?
Even passwordless is, I think, a hard one for folks to understand and get behind. So like I have parts of the organization that I'm in, like sometimes like we do have environments with passwords, sometimes we have ones without. I've seen folks like get very confused about which ones do and which ones don't, and how you can log in and what you can log into with what. So like I have some environments which are driven by passkeys, like hardware tokens, like YubiKeys, keys, things like that. And I can only log in with a YubiKey key. I have other places where I can only log in with a passkey via the Authenticator app. And then I have some places where I can still log in with a password. So that's hard to balance too, is just like the context switch and knowing where you are at any given time and kind of what's allowed in there. So maybe most folks don't have like multiple environments like that or things to think about along those lines. But if you do, it's just another component of end user enablement that you need to think about along the way.
Right.
Microsoft does offer some guidance here, right? To think about like they have an article out there on Learn. Plan a phishing resistant passwordless authentication deployment in Microsoft Entra ID. And it kind of walks you through like high level what to do, but it very much focuses on device readiness. So like what is Windows 10 with Windows Hello for Business enable, Windows 11? What do you get across like mobile platforms, Mac OS, things like that? It doesn't spend a bunch of time on like end user personas, which I think is an important part, is like understanding your audience and what you need to dig into. Like they kind of wishy-wash it and they just say, oh, there's admins and there's non-admins. Well, that's probably not the right way to think about it. Like arguably there's going to be folks in like, I don't know, like let's say like finance or HR, and somebody in finance might have a different authentication method to system XYX versus system Y or system Z or things like that, depending on what that thing is and how important the data is in it and everything else. So I think you got to spend a little bit more time on kind of planning and personas, understand your organization, and then be able to map those things back into those various authentication methods and what you want to enable where, or how you want to enable where, I guess.
You mentioned going back and talking through those. Did you want to kind of work through what are those different ones? I guess kind of thinking at it from a more of an intra perspective in terms of what do we have today and what are some of those options you have?
What do we have today? Like there's where we came from. So you've got the worlds of passwords, all the things you have to deal with passwords. So password spray attacks, all that kind of stuff. SMS, MFA, or OTP codes, things like that. You've had Authenticator with push notifications. And then those push notifications can be as simple like, hey, I want to come in and just Face ID, Touch ID, whatever happens to be on your platform of choice. Or they can also be like number entry kinds of things. And then on top of all of those, you always had things like conditional access layered in as well. So that's kind of the world we're coming from. And then where we're going to is a lot of that stuff is going away. So passwords are going away. SMS, MFA or OTP is going away. So that's that voice retirement component that you talked about there and everything that comes with it. So you got to think across this lens of passwords, SMS and voice, OTP, Authenticator, Windows Hello. You've got FIDO2 keys. You've got synced passkeys. You've got your authenticator passkeys, which are different than just regular authenticator and getting like an OTP code out of it, things like that. And then you've got your conditional access stuff layered in there along the way. So there's a whole bunch of like moving parts and pieces and things to think about depending on where your organization is at today, how your tenant's configured, all those kinds of things.
Yeah, and when you're going in and configuring it, like I've had to do this for my own tenant. I've had to do it for others. And it is really thinking through, what do passkeys mean for your organization? And I think that's where some of what we've been talking about already starts coming into play. As before it was just, okay, SMS and voice. Everybody has a phone. Well, I would hope most people have a phone. You can do SMS, you can do voice. That's pretty easy, straightforward. But then when you get into the area of passkeys, it's, to your point, now maybe I have to do Authenticator app. And I've had clients where I've talked to where they start getting pushback of, no, this is my personal device. And it is 100% my personal device. I am not going to put Authenticator on it so that you can do passkeys. In the past, those types of users in some of these companies I've worked with, they're okay with a voice call or an SMS text because it's not an application. It's not a business application going onto their personal device. So it's, okay, what do we need to do if we're going to go the mobile app route for Authenticator and doing synced passkeys or even push notifications and number matching there? And to the other point of, is it going to work? I've actually had it.
Is it going to work is an important question to ask.
Yeah.
And something to definitely validate out there.
Right. Because you said your experience with Bluetooth is, does it connect? Which the whole Bluetooth with passkeys is still a little bizarre because it's not like you have to necessarily pair the devices together. It still reaches out over Bluetooth to make sure you're in proximity without really doing what most people think of when they're pairing a keyboard or pairing AirPods or pairing a Bluetooth device. You're not doing that, but it is still communicating over Bluetooth, which can be unpredictable. And lately, I still don't know what it is. I have 4 or 5 passkeys on my phone. I cannot use them. I have tried them with like 3 different computers. I've tried resetting the passkeys. I get like the QR code, scan this to use your passkey. I scan it and it just doesn't recognize it. It never connects. And I've started digging into like, do I have something on my phone that's blocking that underlying Bluetooth connection? I have also seen things you can run into issues with VPNs. I have global secure access on some of my devices. So they technically egress through Microsoft's data center in Virginia, I think, when I'm going over global secure access. Now, my phone and my computer are on two different networks that look like they're in geographically different locations. Is that causing an issue? Do I have, there's so many nuances, I feel like, that can go a little bit south with passkeys on mobile devices. That has become a challenge for me. And then it's like, well, what are my other options? Then you start thinking down the YubiKey route. I have different clients that have different requirements for YubiKeys. When you're going and setting up any of these passcodes, whether it's a YubiKey or something else, they all have, I don't even know how to pronounce it. It's the AA GUID that it's not even every manufacturer. It's like every different version or firmware number of these different things have this GUID. 1Password has one, but then YubiKey has one for biometric devices, for proximity devices, for just plug-in devices, and Authenticator has its own. You can go in and start limiting in my Entra environment, people have me saying Entra. In my Entra environment, it is Entra. Different people, I talk to too many people. It is Entra. Let's confirm that a minute. It is Entra, not Entra. In your Entra environment, you can go configure what are these AA GUIDs that I'm going to approve. I'm starting to gather a collection of YubiKeys because it's like this client only has these 3 in there. This client has this one. This client has these. And now I have to start keeping track from my perspective. This maybe isn't your everyday user. Which passkeys are on which YubiKeys that I'm having to swap out as I'm authenticating into different tenants? It very quickly becomes complicated for me because of multiple tenants. But even you've mentioned it with one tenant, as firmware updates, your organization that you're working for may update which ones are allowed. And all of a sudden, one day, just one passkey stops working because they decided we're no longer going to trust that firmware.
I don't know how many folks leverage the AA GUID thing, but if you work in an organization that does,
I've encountered more than I thought.
I wouldn't think most folks would dig in that far because it is kind of buried down in the depths of FIDO key configuration inside of Entra there. But it's a rotating game. So I know for me, I have a stack of YubiKeys at home right now. I just keep them all on my desk on the side, because I can keep using them for other things if I wipe them. So I can use them for my Gmail and my regular Microsoft account, my MSA, my consumer account, things like that. But for my organizational account, I'm on this constant train of bumping YubiKeys because I have to go to new versions of new YubiKeys because they have updated firmware, which probably prevent security concerns and have patches and blah, 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 a bunch of stuff that I've never seen published anywhere. I don't know if YubiKey or Yubico or folks publish those kinds of things, but I'm on this constant march of always having to figure out, is this the right YubiKey? Because they all look the same, but they all have different capabilities. And then does it have the right set of identities on it, which you can't really tell on a YubiKey, right? You kind of have to put it in and try it. There's no YubiKey app that you just load up and it says, oh, here's all the identities that are bound to this thing. So they don't make it very easy. And organizationally, if you're on everybody's on the same version of a YubiKey, and then you have to plan for this, right? So let's say you're a 1,000-person organization, and all of a sudden everybody's on YubiKeys. Great. So you go buy 1,000 YubiKeys, you bulk price, whatever. What happens when those were on firmware 5.4, and now you've got to get everybody to a new AA GUID and up to firmware 5.7 or whatever it happens to be? Well, guess what? You need to go buy 1,000 new YubiKeys. You need to send out those YubiKeys to your users, and then you have to have your users bind a new YubiKey to their account and then stop using their old YubiKey. And what do you do with that? Well, it's just e-waste and other things that are out there. So yeah, it's this whole weird kind of matrix that you have to walk through, and it quickly turns into, I think, what I would just call a quagmire. Right? It's hard to navigate and it's hard to think through. Like I really struggle thinking back to like some of the several thousand person like M365 environments that I've managed in the past about transitioning those organizations over to something like authenticator bound passkeys. Like, oh my gosh, like what a nightmare scenario that is. I'd rather do like a 5,000 seat like office upgrade or an Exchange upgrade or something like that, or a SharePoint farm upgrade than go through and push that one.
Yeah.
Because it's hard, right? You're going away from maybe like something like a YubiKey or a CAC card or something else that you had out there, and then you're binding it to a mobile device. And like you said, like I think some people do have a big hesitation around my personal device coming in, and then like, does my personal device now need to be MDM'd? Well, how hard? Does it need to be MDM'd, and what does that follow along with? So there's a whole bunch of considerations out there on like the hardware side and the procurement side and the lifecycle side that add to the cost of something like passwordless authentication with passkeys like this.
If you're managing file storage today, you've probably felt the pressure. Refresh cycles are harder to plan, costs and complexity are increasing, especially as file workloads scale across regions. That's why Microsoft customers trust Nasuni. As an Azure-certified software, Nasuni provides a global file system designed for enterprise-scale environments, keeping file data secure, governed, and accessible across Azure environments without added infrastructure complexity. It's the foundation to keep your unstructured data stable, even as your infrastructure evolves. To see how much you could save while keeping your initiatives on track, visit nasuni.com/TCO. That's NASUNI.com/TCO. Microsoft is trying to help with this. I would say it's better than it was 3 months ago. I had one company that switched to Passkeys 3 months ago, and it was 3-ish months ago. We sent out instructions, right? Like, go install your Authenticator app, go in here, click on Passkeys, add a passkey, walked them through everything. This was only like 6 or 7 people. And we were like, on this date, you're going to have to use your passkey. We're flipping over conditional access. Passkeys are going to be required. We flipped it over, and like 50% of the 10 people, I can't get into my account. It's telling me I don't have a passkey. Get on the phone with them. Well, did you go do this? No, I just had Authenticator on there and I was getting push notifications and number matching, and I thought that was good enough. No, you actually have to go register a passkey. So, and that was only 10 people. To your point, I can't imagine trying to go through that with 1,000, 2,000. As of July 1, I believe this came out, or June, Microsoft at least rolled out a way now to do a registration campaign in Entra to set up a passkey. So this does support Passkeys FIDO2 to register a passkey, whether it be synced, which is going to be your Authenticator one. I'm still waiting for synced and 1Password. Probably, I'm not going to hold my breath for that one. Or the device bound.
If it comes, please tell me.
I will keep you updated. Or like the device bound, your YubiKeys. Authenticator also has an option of device bound, I think. But it at least has that campaign there now, so you can go turn these on and actually walk people through setting up passkeys versus just it's on or off.
Which is helpful for existing accounts. I think you still need to think about like the new user flow and things like that. So like, how do you onboard your users in a world where there are no passwords and you need to get them a passkey and things like that? That's an interesting one too. I haven't seen a bunch out there about the way organizations are handling that kind of thing, but it's not like well covered in like Microsoft land either.
No, I'm working on this for another client. It is possible because I've had customers onboard me through it. Granted, it was like a 20-page Word document, step by step with screenshots, because it's not straightforward because it involves a temporary access pass and the registration, all that. I would love to see this get better, both from what you said, how do you onboard users initially? But even these registration campaigns, it's pretty much like go turn it on and force people to do a passkey. It doesn't give you a lot of control. Like, do I want to walk people through a registration campaign to use a USB device, or do I want them to go to Authenticator? I'm hoping we see more come with these registration campaigns. to set up passkeys to be able to better control it and guide people through the right path or set which path you want people to take. This is also hard. I don't know if you've had this. Have you ever gone to set up a passkey and 1Password always wants to take over, even if you click that it's a USB passkey? And then you have to go in and say, use a different USB device. And instead of 1Password, select your FIDO key. It's things like that. I feel like from an end user perspective, need to get a lot smoother, or I want to see get a lot smoother for this whole registration process.
I think it's a loaded thing right now. So, like I said, I would like to see Microsoft be more open. So don't bind me to Authenticator. And when I say don't bind me to Authenticator, I mean not Authenticator, but I mean Authenticator with a passkey, which is a different mode that's in there. Like, it makes it super confusing to talk about. So, some of this other stuff, like 1Password, maybe like conflicting with like a browser versus something else. Like, I think that just speaks to like the ecosystems all over the place. Like, does Microsoft really have to care about 1Password? I don't know that they should, but I think they should care about being like open in the ecosystem and kind of meeting customers in the middle where they want to be. Because there are customers out there that, and I've seen like enterprises that use 1Password for management of these kinds of things, and they make it out there and they license it for their users. So I think Microsoft should be maybe like a little bit more open in that space. I would love to see updates to the registration campaign stuff. So to your point, like, I think one of the biggest things with Passkeys is training and user enablement. Like, you do have to spend time there and train your users. I don't think you can just expect that everybody's going to grok it and pick it up. But like, those registration campaigns don't give you a lot of flexibility. Like, sure, I can go out and create this thing, but all it's going to do is hound my user to go ahead and create MFA and get a passkey or authenticator enablement if you're doing that. And that's kind of it. Like, you'd really want the ability to like add a help link here. Like, just like click this link to learn more, and maybe go over to like your custom learning system or your documentation, things like that. Because to your point, it could be a 20-page PDF or a 20-page Word doc for onboarding, but I guarantee it's usually a couple pages at least, like 4 or 5 min by the time you put some screenshots and stuff in there to get folks to where they need to be. So I think like having that, Microsoft should probably go and provide some additional, like, I don't actually know if they do. I didn't see this. Like, you know how they provide like the onboarding campaigns for SharePoint and Outlook and Exchange Online, all those kinds of things. I've never seen one for MFA, like an enablement campaign thing, like the Word templates and everything that's out there. So yeah, you're largely left to your own in this space, which is, it's just a weird one for the way it sits out there. And I think the lift for customers and the folks who are admins and operators of these environments and what they need to do there.
I hope this is going to be coming faster and faster, where it's going to be passkeys.
It's going to keep barreling down.
Yeah. I'm actually surprised. This is the one area I'm surprised still uses SMS for everything. Is by and large, all of my banks still use SMS for authentication. And the reason I say this is coming faster and faster, I have seen with AI is really good at writing by and large. The phishing emails and the phishing attacks that I have started seeing, certain things you used to look for in emails to know that it was phishing, and again, SMS, voice, OTP, all of these are very phishing vulnerable. And even voice calling, with what AI can do with voice now and replicating someone else's voice.
Only takes about 10 seconds, 15 seconds from a clip. It's kind of wild.
You're going to have to move. Someone can replicate both of us, Scott, from our podcast. Take all of our podcast episodes and create the virtual Ben and Scott. Passkeys are going to have to be there to prevent some of these phishing, because phishing things like OTP and SMS and voice is going to get easier and easier, I think, at an exponential pace with the way technology and AI and all of that are going.
This brings up an interesting question. So in the world of these things are changing rapidly, and there's kind of a clear roadmap, at least from the M365 Entra ID side, to say, hey, let's get from kind of X to Y or A to B as a destination kind of thing, is when you're going down and you're enabling all these things, is how do you think about backup credentials And because you can have multiple modes of authentication today. Like the goal is passwordless, but you have all these other click stops and maybe these things that you're using out there today, and they become legitimate backups, right? If I'm really struggling with my passwordless authentication and passkey, like, do you give me a fallback and let me go to OTP or voice or something else for a little while? So how many backup credentials do you think like folks should have in an organization generally? And then how many backup credentials do you think admins or like privileged operators should have? And at some point, you're going to have to think about disabling those, right? So how many backup credentials should admins, privileged operators have versus regular users before you're comfortable going ahead and like disabling some of those weaker methods, things that are out there?
I'm trying to think over the last several months when I've had to go in and get into different environments. I think based on the last several months or even years, I think you could do two: one backup method and a primary. I think you could get away with, and this, you could define the nuances here of backups. I would go with one passkey. And this is where it's a nuance is, do you count one method as having like two different YubiKeys and a passkey and authenticator? Does that count as just passkey, or is that technically three different ways? And then I still have fallen back to something in authenticator, whether it's a push number matching. There have been a couple times where I've had to fall back to an OTP, where I go to try to log into Entra and it says, we couldn't send you a push notification right now. And I've had to go back to that OTP route using a code in authenticator, or I will do some OTP codes and one password. So I think that's where I would fall out, is maybe something in authenticator, whether a push or an OTP. And I would probably say multiple passkeys, one of them not being an authenticator, having a physical hardware passkey, partly because of the challenges I have had with some of the passkeys and authenticator.
I think you have to do it. Like, it's kind of like the 3-2-1 backup method thing. And putting all your eggs in the authenticator basket is kind of hard, whether it's passkey or it's OTP through authenticator or like push notification with a number, things like that. Because like, one, what if the authenticator app is broken today, which could happen along the way? Like, who knows? Like you said, you can't get push notifications, and that could be a failure on Microsoft's side. Could be a failure on the app side, could be a connectivity thing, all that. So I think you have to have something else that's outside of this. So whether that's like device bound, like a FIDO2 key sitting like there at your desk, which, yeah, maybe that's got like a different like token timeout and you have to re-authenticate more, but at least you can get into the environment and you can do things. That's an important one. I do think there's less value in the world of things like voice, SMS, all that. Like if you're going to go and say like, hey, 3-2-1 is password, passkey on authenticator plus OTP on authenticator plus a FIDO key, I think that kind of gets you there. SMS, you're probably, like 99+% of the time SMSing the same phone that authenticator is already on. So, or same thing with voice, you're calling usually the same number, things like that. So I don't think you have to go down that path. And maybe that helps you. Like if you do go start transitioning users and getting them over, you can at least get them used to the authenticator app for all the foibles that it has, but at least get them used to it and then give them some kind of backup method outside of that. Ideally in like a FIDO2 key, but then I think you do have to weigh like, one, do we want to get FIDO2 keys for everybody? Two, which ones do we get? Because there is the whole like support risk trade-off thing there that we were talking about with like firmwares and things like that. So maybe if you got a bunch of YubiKeys years ago, maybe you really don't want to do those and you just want to push your users over to another kind of authentication method that's out there.
And I think admins, because you also mentioned admins.
I think this is where the admin versus non-admin one becomes an interesting thing, right? Like my admin's super privileged. I don't know. I might actually want to make them like YubiKey only and authenticate a whole bunch, right? Like, so I'm not dependent on a device. I'm not dependent on someone taking a device from them. It's just YubiKey. They've got like, you can make things like pin bound requirements and all that. So like I have some environments that I authenticate to that have like a 10 character password, others with an 8, some with a 6, like it's all over the place, but you can do those kinds of things. And I I think admins are a little more willing to take on some of that friction and burden, even though we all hate it. I think we're like positioned to do it versus just a regular user who I would want to have more like softer fallback methods for, like, oh, hey, passwordless, like that whole like Bluetooth negotiation thing didn't work, but you've got the option of doing a push notification or OTP through Authenticator or something like that. So at least they're still in the same app, same place kind of thing, and you can move them towards the next.
Yeah, and I think as an admin too, I would also say at least 2 YubiKeys or 2 FIDO2 keys. Like, don't just have one, because the last thing you want is your global admin accounts, or I mean, even if you have multiple global admin accounts, is in an emergency, nobody can find their one YubiKey. They left it in a backpack. It's at their desk and they're on the road. Like, I have a YubiKey that pretty much sits in my general desk vicinity, but then I have another one that's 99.9% of the time with me as I travel around, whether it's a backpack or you have it on your keys, whatever that is. And then I actually oftentimes have 3 where I have another one that's just stuck away somewhere if I need to get to it. But I think you do have to be careful when you start getting into some of the admin and especially global admin. If you're going to rely on YubiKey only, don't rely on just one YubiKey for that global admin. Have 2 or 3. Even if one of them's in a safe, like stick it in a safe, stick it away as a backup.
You do have to have some break glass someplace to be able to get in and do those things.
But I think passwords, I would say, are less and less. I honestly cannot remember the last time I've needed my password for Microsoft 365. Everything I've been able to do lately with either FIDO2 or a number matching push notification passwordless through Authenticator.
I've only had to do passwords on Windows devices where, for whatever reason, like Windows Hello for Business doesn't work or isn't available. So for example, maybe like a virtual machine. So you spin up a virtual machine, you're testing something out, you bind it to your environment. It might not have like a full TPM or like a proper TPM to do like Windows Hello for Business. Especially like for you and I, we're typically on Macs. Like if you spin up a VM in VMware Fusion or over in Parallels, something like that, like you can do Windows Hello on a TPM via a PIN, but your password's also sitting there, like ready to go and enabled and spun up. So I think that's really the only time that I use a password.
That you've had to use one?
I don't use a FIDO key with macOS because they're so janky there, but you do have like Touch ID on Macs, certain keyboards and things like that. So I think that's okay. But on like the Windows side of things, like I'm probably 90+% passkey, just authenticator and hey, hope it binds to my device the right way. And then really I'm only on FIDO keys for the devices that require FIDO keys or for the environments that I log into that require FIDO. But I haven't changed my password in years, I think. I think I still have the same password that I started with when I joined Microsoft 6 years ago, which is kind of wild, right? I've worked for those organizations where you change your password every 90 days. I'm like, either Microsoft's wrong or they were wrong, but I think Microsoft's right in how they're doing this thing and pushing it through. So I think less and less, like there is like less of that reliance. I think if you can get over the technical hurdles and the technological hurdles, which no matter what you say, like I would die on this hill, like they are there and they do exist.
Yes.
You're going to have to constantly kind of go with users and work with them to get them through that. But if you're willing to go down that path and do it, I think it is an interesting place to land. So like I said, I would love for Microsoft to provide more guidance, more flexibility, and like things like those registration campaigns and flows. And I would actually love to see like solid guidance or like even like a canned implementation of like, here's like a sidecar website or something like that allows you to stand this up in your environment or in the cloud someplace that allows for that new user onboarding. Like, how do I onboard a new user in a passwordless world? And I need to get them like set up with a passkey on Authenticator. Like that is still a very weird flow and weird problem to go and solve. I've seen orgs solve that in different ways with like custom websites and different things that are out there. But I think Microsoft could do a little bit better, kind of like shoring up the guidance there and providing like, here's the hero experience for how those things go. So that way you're not locked into here's the new customer, client, or organization I'm joining. And every single one has its own bespoke implementation of a 20-page PDF that you've got to go out and read and figure out.
100%.
So as always, thanks to folks for listening. Questions, comments, hit us up on the website. We have a contact form there. If you'd be so kind, give us a review in your podcatcher or place of choice. If you listen to us through Google Play, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, things like that, we'd really appreciate it. I would also call out, Ben, we have a subreddit and we publish all the episodes over to a subreddit. We were hoping to drive maybe some discussions there. So, if folks want to kind of go over to Reddit, what is our subreddit, Ben? Remind me. It's just MS Cloud.
I have tried to unify everything around MS Cloud IT Pro, and I believe Reddit is in the same boat.
So if you go to reddit.com/r MS Cloud IT Pro, you'll see all of the podcast episodes out there as well. So if you want to have a discussion with us there, maybe the contact form is a little hard to use, things like that, come and hit us up and leave us a question or a suggestion, anything like that. We always love the feedback and the comments and new ideas that folks bring.
Absolutely. Well, thanks, Scott. Go enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Ben. Have a good one.
You too. If you enjoyed the podcast, go leave us a 5-star rating in iTunes. It helps to get the word out so more IT pros can learn about Office 365 and Azure. If you have any questions you want us to address on the show or feedback about the show, feel free to reach out via our website, Twitter, or Facebook. Thanks again for listening and have a great day.